G'day, I'm Hugh Bowman from ActionCOACH. Today I want to talk about gross profit. So what is it and why do we care about it? Reality is, a client of mine asked me about it this week, and so to help him out, I'm doing this video, so I thought it'd help other people too. So what is it? So I want to talk about it with respect to a job as well as like a monthly P&L. So let's talk about it as a job to start with. So suppose you had a job and it cost $100, right? And the costs of sales, i.e. the materials used on the job, which might be concrete and timber and the likes, plus the site labour added up to $60. So lo and behold, we'd call the gross profit would be 40, like this. Now that's worth knowing because if, when people talk about, oh, they've got a job, do you make money out of the job? They'll be talking about they made $40 on this job. So they're talking about gross profit really, but they use the phrase profit. So when people are talking about profit on jobs, they're talking about gross profit really. So that's one thing worth knowing. Now the other obvious thing is that the gross profit doesn't factor in all the overheads of the business. So this in some ways, we've got if you're looking like a monthly P&L, we'll be factoring all the overheads as well. But comparing a job to job, gross profit is really useful. So what gross profit did you make on this job? What did you make, gross profit did you make on a job that was of similar size, for example? And similarly, it's a good way to compare one business to the next. Right, so if you think of it in terms of a monthly P&L, I call it, the month of August, you're talking about the print off the profit and loss, it would look like the sales for the month might be 100K, for example, and the costs of sales, which would be all the materials you used for the month, and all of the site labour you've used for the month was 60K, that would mean you had a gross profit of 40K. Now, on top of that, out of that has to come your expenses. Now, they're sometimes referred as overheads. So expenses are things that cannot be attributed to one particular job. Things like phones and insurance and rent, usually they're all pretty consistent every single month. In fact, you call them fixed costs or fixed overheads because you're going to pay it anyway. If your sales go up by 30%, you're probably paying the same amount of expenses. Now, and that's really worthwhile knowing because if you know what your fixed expenses are, your gross profit just has to overcome the expenses and that's your break even. So to go to the next line down, on a P&L, so if you've got sales of 100, costs of 60, expenses of 20, we know the profit is going to be 20. Now, of course, the gross profit less expenses is 20 as well. So there's two ways of calculating. So why do we care? Now, if we relate these key metrics in a percentage of sales, that becomes quite useful. So obviously, imagine if we're looking at it on a monthly or even a quarterly for the business, you're talking about the sales, as a percentage of sales, that would be 100%. And similarly, the cost of sales as a percentage of sales, it's 60 divided by 100, so that's 60%. And gross profit would be 40% of sales. Now this is the thing that I really like, when I'm working with clients over making sure we make money per job, I go, well, let's calculate the gross profit percentage on every job and work out which ones are higher and which ones lower. Because just from knowing that our gross profit was 40%, because in the back of my mind, I know what the overheads are going to cost, and that's where we're going to get to here. So you think of expenses or overheads, that would be 20% of sales, and of course profit is also 20%. So if we're comparing one job to the next, a whole string of jobs over a quarter, imagine you've got 6 or 8 or 10 jobs, we could look at the gross profit and we made 50% on a job, we go, well, that's good because in the back of my mind I know that our expenses run at 20%. We made 30% on a job, we're going, oh, that's getting a bit low. I know, I can already guess that my profit's going to be lower on that particular job. So that's the value of it. So if you're trying to compare jobs or compare different businesses, like your plumbing business to another guy's plumbing business, you compare on gross profit percentage, that's the way to do it because that's your operational efficiency of the business. So there's a bit of discussion around that. I hope that helps you out. If you've got any questions about any of these sort of items, reach out. I'm sure I can explain it better or more for you. All right, hope that helps you out. Bye for now.